The limousine door closed with a soft thud, sealing in the scent of leather and power. Moments later, a small voice cut through the air, sharp, unexpected, and laced with defiance. "Shut up." It wasn't the driver. It wasn't an aide. It was a little black girl, no more than 7, staring straight at the most powerful CEO in the city. In that instant, the world outside kept moving, but inside that car, everything stopped. What could make a child speak to a billionaire like that? By the time he found out, it wouldn't just change his day. It would change his life forever. Nathaniel Cross was the kind of man whose name alone could shift markets. At 48, he had built an empire from scratch: skyscrapers, luxury hotels, private jets. People said his handshake could open doors in any corner of the world, but power had a way of isolating him. Conversations around him were measured, careful. No one told him to shut up, not until that morning. The city outside was just waking, sunlight glinting off steel towers, the hum of traffic like a low orchestra. Nathaniel had been headed to an early board meeting, his mind busy with numbers and mergers, when the limo made an unscheduled stop. His driver, without explanation, opened the door for a young girl in a worn yellow dress, her braids slightly frayed, her shoes scuffed. She slid into the seat without hesitation, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. She didn't smile, didn't fidget. She just looked at him, not the way most people did, with awe or envy, but with a steady, unflinching gaze. That was when the words came, quiet yet cutting. "Shut up." Nathaniel froze. He hadn't even been speaking, but something in her tone, not childish rebellion, but raw, urgent conviction, silenced the 1,000 questions forming in his head. The driver said nothing, eyes fixed ahead. The car kept moving, as if this were the most natural thing in the world, but Nathaniel could feel it, a tension in the air, heavy, unspoken. Whoever this child was, she wasn't here by accident. And the reason she was in his car was about to drag him into a world he had spent his entire life avoiding. The limo glided through streets Nathaniel rarely traveled, the kind of neighborhoods he only read about in crime statistics and policy reports. Outside, the glossy veneer of the city peeled away, cracked sidewalks, boarded-up storefronts, and graffiti that told stories no one in his boardroom wanted to hear. The girl sat perfectly still, her rabbit clutched in her lap. Nathaniel found himself watching her in the reflection of the tinted glass. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her braids were uneven, as if someone had done them in a hurry. There was a faint bruise along her temple, barely visible beneath her dark skin. He opened his mouth to ask a question, but the girl's eyes flicked to his, and the same words whispered again. "Shut up." The tone was different this time, softer, almost protective. It was then Nathaniel realized she wasn't telling him to be quiet for her sake. She was telling him to be quiet for his. The car slowed to a crawl before pulling into a narrow alley. The driver, still silent, stepped out and opened the door. Nathaniel hesitated. This was absurd. He was the CEO of a billion-dollar conglomerate, not someone to be whisked around without explanation. But the girl was already outside, walking with purpose. They entered an old brick building whose exterior was a patchwork of repairs and neglect. Inside, the air was heavy with dampness, the hallway lit by a single flickering bulb. It wasn't until they reached the 3rd floor that Nathaniel understood why he had been brought here. The apartment door was ajar, and inside, chaos. A small living room crammed with secondhand furniture, the smell of mildew and stale air pressing in. On the couch sat a woman, skin pale beneath exhaustion, her arms trembling as she held a phone in one hand and a crumpled eviction notice in the other. The girl immediately went to her, crawling into her lap without a word. The woman didn't speak either. She just buried her face into the child's braids and let out a shuddering breath. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, unsure whether to step in or retreat. He didn't belong here. Yet he could feel the weight of their silence, the quiet dignity of people who had learned that asking for help rarely brought any. His gaze drifted to the kitchen table. A stack of unopened bills, a letter from a hospital, and a photo of the girl standing in front of a rusting playground slide. Something in that picture made his chest tighten. The woman finally looked up at him. Her eyes were sharp, guarded, as if she already knew exactly who he was and what he represented. "You don't remember me, do you?" she said, her voice hoarse. Nathaniel said nothing, but a cold feeling crept into him, the kind that comes when you realize your life has been connected to someone else's in ways you never imagined, and not for the better. Nathaniel's brows furrowed. Her face stirred something in the back of his memory, a fleeting image, a long-forgotten moment, but he couldn't place it. The woman rose slowly, setting the girl down beside her. 20 years ago, she began, your company bought out the housing block where my family lived. We were given 30 days to leave. My father begged for more time. Your office said no. Nathaniel's throat tightened. He had been young then, a rising executive eager to prove himself. Deals were numbers to him. Acquisitions, profit margins. Never people. My father worked 2 jobs, she continued, her voice shaking now. One as a janitor in your building. The day before we were supposed to move, he collapsed in the lobby. Heart attack. The security guards stepped over him because they thought he was loitering. He died before the ambulance arrived. Nathaniel's breath caught. The girl clutched the woman's hand, watching his every reaction. We lost everything that week, the woman said, her eyes locked on his. I was 17. I dropped out of school to take care of my mother. Years later, when my little girl was born, I swore I'd keep her safe. But the world doesn't let people like us stay safe for long. She gestured to the eviction notice on the table. Your development plans, the ones you just approved last month, will tear down the only affordable housing left in this neighborhood. You're doing to her what you did to me. The words hit harder than any boardroom confrontation. Nathaniel felt the blood drain from his face. This wasn't just a complaint. This was history repeating itself, his decisions reaching across decades to crush the same family twice. The little girl's voice broke the silence again, steady and unafraid. I told you to shut up, because you needed to listen. It was the first time Nathaniel realized the truth. This wasn't a chance meeting. This was a reckoning. Nathaniel sat back in the chair, the weight of 2 decades pressing down on him. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent, relentless. But inside that small room, time felt frozen. The girl's words echoed in his head, cutting deeper than any corporate scandal or courtroom defeat ever had. He thought of the speeches he'd given about progress and urban renewal, the photographs of shiny new buildings he had proudly displayed in board meetings. None of them showed the empty eyes of families standing beside moving trucks, or the way children clutched their toys as strangers dismantled their homes. For the first time in years, Nathaniel felt ashamed, not of a business deal gone wrong, but of the very measure of success he had built his life on. The woman didn't push him for money. She didn't demand an apology. She simply gathered her daughter's backpack, ready to leave, as if she knew nothing he could offer would fix the years already stolen. But as her hand reached for the door, Nathaniel's voice stopped. The word was heavy, trembling. He promised to personally halt the demolition of the housing block until an alternative plan was made. one that kept families in their home. He vowed to fund a legal aid program for residents facing eviction and to establish a scholarship in her father's name. The woman said nothing. She only studied him for a long moment, as if weighing whether this was genuine change or another performance. Finally, she gave a single nod and stepped into the hallway, her daughter skipping beside her. Nathaniel remained seated long after they were gone, the smell of stale coffee and printer ink filling the silence. In the reflection of the office window, he no longer saw the untouchable CEO. He saw a man confronted by the truth and the choice to either keep living the same way or change course entirely. The girl's voice lingered in his mind, steady and unflinching. You needed to listen. Because in the end, racism isn't always shouted in the streets. Sometimes it's hidden in contracts, boardrooms, and quiet decisions that decide who gets to stay and who has to go. So the question remains, if someone confronted you with the harm your success has caused, would you listen